welcome to Non-Perishable Goods Podcast.
Excited.
And I know, we've been kind of talking about doing this topic. It's been tough. I'm not
It,
gonna lie.
I think it's
It's
tough for both of us because it's our genre, right? It's our genre of music. It's people that have had lasting memories with their music. We've made memories. We've gone to the club. We've been at the cookout. We've been to the weddings, and their music has very much been synonymous with those types of memories that we've made. And then come to find out they're not so great human beings, and I think we've been talking a lot. Like, I think some of even our shows, like what this is our 12th or 13th show, a lot of what our shows have been about are kind of character morality. Last week's was really good. I thought we could have probably went for 3 hours,
oh, I know, definitely.
with how much information we have, with that project and just talking about candidates and things like that. But then you go into this part of entertainment and fashion because they're very much commingle, right? And we exalt our entertainers to a very high level of idolism. Like
Yeah,
we
they're almost
idolize
like they're almost like royalty in America,
for sure. And
unfortunately.
when it's kind of brought to the forefront of like, this person just isn't good. Like, it's not. It's kind of, and that's like kind of like one of the first things I wanted to delve in with you, is because it's been such a talked about thing. I felt like there's certain things in our culture. I don't want to just say Black culture, because it's not just Black culture. Like, Black culture for me is very synonymous with every culture, right? And
And
hip hop,
American culture.
yeah. Um, Hip hop culture and in R&B and those types of things are very synonymous with everything in today's world. Just 30 years ago, if you go to a baseball game, you heard a lot of classic rock, country, and maybe some pop, some Michael Jackson kind of stuff. And now if you go to a stadium, I remember when I really saw it was went to the 2017 World Baseball Classic in LA,
Huh.
and then also went to the one, I think, in 2014 in San Francisco. And we went to the LA one. That was the finale. The first day out, Drake had just dropped Views. And so I might have my year wrong, but somebody can go fact check when it was dropped. But it was dropped in the winter, and Views came out. And the DJ spun the whole album during batting practice. So now it's like everybody's walk-up songs, everybody's intros, any NBA game, any NFL game, hip hop,
Highly
R&B.
influential.
Yes. And I've always looked at, you know, Jay-Z had a line, he's just like, we all as rappers want to be the athletes, all the athletes want to be rappers. And for a long time, like from I would say mid to late 90s, all the way up until now still, a lot of athletes want to be in music, want to be fashion, have that type of ambiance about themselves. And then some really high moguls, guys that are responsible for the culture,
Right.
are have kind
In
of
my Sean John.
yeah, but have kind of let us down, right? And
Um,
then you take all of that, and then you have this whole thing of, I hate the term because I think it's stupid, but cancel culture, right? So like
mm,
things of certain magnitudes where, and this all goes into even last week's show, right, Stace, is the media has a big part in this, what they tell us or what they share, how they spin it. So again, reporting on these types of things it's all over the place. So it's like
yeah,
you have to figure out what source you're going to use in order to make a decision. Should I listen to this person's music? Should I still support these individuals? And I think a lot of these individuals have taken huge hits. Some are in jail. Um, some got lucky because they had probably good defense teams and have had, to pay out on certain stuff. And, I understand a lot of people don't understand legalities Um, I was a person that if somebody took a plea deal or somebody was going to pay up without having to go to court, it's like, oh, you're guilty, and we don't know that per se, but like with Diddy's situation, I mean, that evidence, leaked 2 weeks after we knew that he had paid Cassie off. And then all of a sudden, here's the video. It's like, oh man, dude, like you're done, but it's like some of these guys have really bad PR teams. Some of these guys have just done so much in the dark that it's now all to light.
Exactly. And that's kind of where, like you said, we do speak a lot on morality on this show. And I don't really like to talk about, the people so much. I like to talk about what we can learn from their, the situations that they've put themselves into. And like you just said, like whatever is done in the dark is always coming to light. And we've seen that. We've seen that over the last few years in the entertainment industry, period. Not just hip hop culture, but with the Harvey Weinsteins and the Jeffrey Epsteins. And it's just like it's all that culture, that sexual power, money. I think it's more power culture, which money makes you powerful. It's being exposed. Like it's happening everywhere. Like I heard today that even in like the classical music world, there's a lot of sexual harassment or power dynamics in we know with men and women who are trying to be somebody, like this. It's I don't know. I just know that a lot of things are being exposed right now. And
Netflix, no, it's not Netflix. HBO has this thing about, the child actors of the 80s and the 90s. And
like
I've
it's
only
been happening forever.
I've only got through halfway through it, but some of the things that were there were very deafening. And you've heard stories of Todd Bridges and Annie and all these people. It's like, okay, so at what point do we as a people, because we're harvested and curated to want entertainment, whether it's sports, leisure, music, fashion. We are very curated in that in our society to feed off of that and to put into those things, right? And so at what point is this, do we say, okay, enough is enough, or, who are we to support, and again, there's a lot of people that will probably say, I don't really care what my favorite entertainer is doing behind closed doors, right? And that's just the reality of kind of playing devil's advocate with this whole thing. But it's
Right.
like it's
But
really hard.
but real quick, but if you're trying to have this image, because a lot of these guys that are doing these things behind closed doors are putting out this black excellence image. They're putting out, I'm the, such a good person, even like Will Smith, like we could bring him up at this point. Like a lot of stuff starting to come out about him. And I just find that people have this image that they're presenting for so long, but after a while, like you can't hide it anymore. Like you're gonna slap somebody on the Oscar stage because they put you in a state of rage or whatever. And I don't know. I just don't see, it's just a lot.
It is. It's a lot to unpack. I mean,
Like it's like which direction do we even want to go into? But he I don't know. People in the entertainment industry, I think it just really comes down to the whole work culture and like people wanting to be on so bad.
so with that being said, so many people want to be on.
And they'll do anything. Like
Yeah,
there's so, you know what
that's
I
the
mean?
thing. It's like, okay, so if somebody wants to get put on, who's to say that they're not perpetuating this other individual as well? And again, I understand the predator prey kind of deal, but then you also understand that people will do a lot of shit to be famous, and they will sell their soul to quote unquote the devil to have that infamous status.
And I think a lot of men in these powerful positions know that. But back to your point of should we cancel people? because of what they do behind the scenes. I think it depends on the offense, and it also depends on how much they try to have this like good boy image, yet they're not anything they're like living at all. So
So
that for me, that's
let's
where I would draw a line.
yeah, let's bring up The Godfather, right? That's who I want to start with first, and I want to get your opinion on Russell Simmons
Oh,
because it's
I was gonna say
you know
who, James Brown?
uh, nah Russell because Russ has been known to have his hand in all these young models.
Yeah, the modeling industry is huge for this power dynamic.
Yeah, and so Kimura and all these other kind of infamous types of situations, it was almost like everybody kind of turned a blind eye to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
And
it's accepted, and people feared these people.
yeah, because they held the crown, right?
Yeah, they hold the jobs, they hold the opportunities.
So what do you feel about Russ? I'm dying to hear what you have to say.
I love Russell Simmons for what he has done for hip hop culture. He's definitely a pioneer
Hmm.
in our culture. But I think as we get to know a lot of our favorites, their personal lives are in shambles. And they don't make the best choices. And for me, seeing that he's in Bali or wherever he is right now, like acting like he's this Zen yoga all day long, but run amok here in America before he left, like it just kind of raises questions like, why are you there? Like, I mean, I know social media makes people guilty before proven innocent, which it should be the other way around, you know?
So that way, even before social media.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if people are doing things and over the years you hear that they've been doing so many terrible things, then
Hmm.
you kind of, where there's smoke, there's fire. You kind of believe it, you
Hmm.
know? Even though they're putting out this image that they're not doing that, even if they're making statements saying they're not doing that, and then a video comes out of them doing that,
Yeah.
so it's like,
Like,
bro,
it's
like
kind
you're
of like
guilty.
the norm. Doesn't that feel like it's kind of like the norm
What?
that they have this image, right? And over the years, obviously, like the next person we can get into is Puffy. Is he's been embroiled in so much, like, and it's funny because like you see this persona of I'm going to lead with love, and love is the answer, love is the key.
And he's gonna change his name to Love? Stop it.
But knowing all these things had taken place, and knowing that you've literally destroyed a young lady's like
Yeah, her life. But
her
he
life.
did a good job. He did a good job finessing us, you
Oh,
know?
sure. I mean,
Like
think
where does that how does that happen though? Like is
I mean,
that from the power?
he's lost a lot of deals, but the overall gain of money and investments through that in entertainment and power. Um, I'm just interested to see how he's viewed in the next 5 years, 3 to 5 years, or if something catastrophically even happens.
And
You know,
people are already canceling him like crazy. And I'm just like, dude, you guys, what? Like, I mean, it is terrible that he had this domestic violence situation for sure. But all the other stuff, I
but
don't
there's a
know yet.
athletes that have these things too, right? And I don't think that they're of the magnitude and power because, again, when you think about Russell Simmons and Puff Daddy, they're very synonymous with hip hop culture. They're on the Mount Rushmore of moguls in hip hop and what they've done. But then, over the last, I would say 10 years, just like with BIG stuff and hearing all these different things and then the arrest of these guys and connections and, all of this stuff. At what point do you just say, like, I'm good on this guy? Like, for me, I'm kind of good, right? And I
Yeah, I'm good
appreciate,
on it.
I mean, this is our life. I mean, we've been listening to this dude since we were 12 years old, 11, 12
Yeah,
years old with
yeah.
him. at the standpoint of Mary J. Blige, Jodeci, Craig Mack, Big, 112. I mean, Mace, Cameron. Like we've have these dudes. Russell is responsible for us having Jay-Z, DMX, Def Jam in the '90s was hip hop. It's like so it's scary because
He opened a lot of doors
a lot of doors, and
for the
so.
whole hip hop, basically.
But I wonder what kind of thing he sold out to as well. Like that's the one thing because that's what interests me, right? It's not the conspiracy theory of it. It's okay, what made you transpire to be this person, but you're not this person when you're in an interview. And I get it, it's entertainment. I have to always put it in that box. It's like, okay, you're an entertainer. So if you're in an interview, maybe 60 or 40% of what you're going to give us is fluff. 60% of it is going to be fluff. 40% of it's going to be real. Because I always err on that side with those types of folks.
Mm-hmm.
And then studying communications and journalism and things like that, I know for a fact that there's a lot of questions that are asked that will not be answered, right? That are saying, oh, no, that's off the record. I don't want that,
Yeah, like a Diddy situation, why Homeland Security?
Yeah. So, I
We
mean,
may never know.
I think it's honestly, it's a deeper manipulation within the culture and with media. I think because so much money is involved, Stace, that we don't really know who the powers are at B that are pulling the strings on some of this stuff. And I think a lot of people.
But wait. Are you saying that somebody is causing all this to happen in Diddy's life or being exposed? And it's not him being.
Yeah, I think the exposure part of somebody's calling the shots, obviously. I mean, because we know certain shot callers in the industry, right? We did our first episode on one of the biggest shot callers in the music industry and streaming industry, right? Like he is revolutionary, Jimmy Iovine, for collaborating with Apple and being the first, music mogul to take things off the shelves and put them in a stream, right? With the iPod and Beats and all that type of stuff. And there's endless amounts of like it's almost that infinite 3.14, algorithm math equation that he did. Some guys have just that it, like Jay-Z's that it. Like if Jay-Z came out with a new line of shoes or a new line of colognes or whatever he really touches, the masses buy and they consume. So if he put out an album tonight, that thing would break the internet, and it's like you're waiting for certain people like that to do certain things like that. I feel like it's funny because Eminem's album, I'm not an Eminem fan. I know that might be hard to understand, but
I liked his first stuff, but
yeah, and I'm more of him being on others type stuff in a sense. Like I feel like he's a great guest verse guy as opposed to a full album. I just have never been into what he's talking about. But I look at him and it's like, okay, I don't think he resonates with today's culture in a lot of ways. And a lot of people are trying to cancel him on the things that he said just on this newest album that just dropped last week. So I just feel like these guys that used to be gatekeepers, the guys that we used to look up to, we went and, a lot of our boys, our boy Dave Kraft worked for Fat Farm for like 5-6 years in Chicago, and so my little brother worked for Rockaware in LA. And I saw some of those dynamics that they were going through. And just on the clothing side, it's not even the music side. There's so many moving parts and there's so many jobs and there's so much of an economy that's a part of our culture. And then the top dudes are not really good top dudes. Not saying they're not good at their job. What I'm saying is just the morality piece.
yeah,
Like,
but everybody is like that. And I think that's what enabled a lot of these men to act in the way that they've acted, is because if everybody's doing it, who's going to be like, oh, let's not do that? Especially when they're getting away with it. And it's just like now it's coming to fruition. Like all the seeds that they've planted are been watered, been fertilized, and now they're like being exposed. Like their harvest is here. And that's why a lot of people say, oh, well, they're trying to take Diddy down. They're trying to take down all these men and all the black men and whatever. But my whole thing is, well, if they didn't plant these seeds, if they didn't actually do these things, they wouldn't have anything to take them down with. And so for me, it's a lot of accountability stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely unfair how black men are treated versus white men on these levels. Like if we just look at
Oh,
how
sure. I
they
mean,
raided Diddy's house.
somebody's running for president that just had hush money on a sexual assault case. So it's like,
Same exact stuff.
yeah.
Yes.
And I think that that's a big bias too, and we can delve into that as well. I mean, we always know that there's going to be a bias. We always know that there's going to be a social media bias. There's going to be an overall media entertainment bias towards men. I think you go into the Bill Cosby's of the world, all of this stuff, R. Kelly. You just find out. I mean, fuck,
But they were
Marvin Gaye,
living the life. That's my thing. They were doing these
it's
things.
Rolling Stone type style life, and you got to remember that too. I mean, these dudes, a lot of them have drug abuse and alcoholic addictions and problems. So there's a lot of deep,
Rage.
darker, yeah, there's a lot of deeper, darker mental health issues that are characteristics that aren't being explained.
And put that with power. Put mental health issues with power. Now you're on a whole nother level of
Oh, for
crazy.
sure. And that's why I always say the game of baseball and just life is chess, not checkers. And the ones that are winning are playing chess. It's just, I feel like some of the guys that are winning have been hiding their pieces or changing the
Yeah.
rules of the game. But that's the evolution of man, right? Is trying to seek and find and make sure you stay away from the stupid. But it's really hard because I think
Or
like we
stay away from the harlots. Let's just be very clear. Let's stop seeking pleasure. Like, I mean, you're seeking pleasure is the downfall to a lot of men and women.
I think it's both. I don't think it's more prevalent that we know more about women's transgressions and things like that in today's world because things are so amplified because of platforms, streams, things like that. Um,
Real quick, can men tell the difference in like a good woman versus a woman who's just after you for your money? Like, can men see that or discern that?
oh
Do you
fuck
think?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, mm.
And I can only tell you on. I don't want to delve too much into personal experience, but yeah, I mean it's pretty easy to see. It's easy to see if somebody's genuine about you or about what you're trying to accomplish. Um, I think what I go back to is even like Tiger Woods, right? Like his documentary was very telling about what his father was to him. And at an early age, he saw a lot of gambling, degenerate type behavior with um, sexual promiscuity on the golf course. During his rounds, his dad's taking off to go bang the cart girl. Just
Shut
different.
up.
So when you are subjected to early onset behavior that you're thinking is okay, first and foremost, most kids have a morality based on what they have in the house, but they also have a little bit of, okay, yeah, that's not right. That's a wrong thing. That's why kids say no so often, right? It's just their feelings. And usually their feelings are very innocent to knowing what they do want. And when you allow an adolescent to express themselves or learn how to want what is needed as opposed to wanting just to want, um, those are very learned behaviors. And, his transgressions and those types of things of being a womanizer and a manipulator and a cheater and all these different facets, when all those girls came out of the woodworks on him, um, I didn't place like 100% of the blame on him, knowing what I do know as far as the documentary was concerned and what was learned. I mean, these are learned behaviors from his adult people that were supposed to harness his innocence and harness his morality and his, not just his golf, but just him as his character as a human being. And when you don't have that, or that part is skewed, there is going to be a part of you that is skewed, right? And
Absolutely.
we
All
do
abuse.
now know, well, it's a form of child abuse in a lot of ways. It's a form of um like very much being immoral if you're living on a certain code, whether it's your religion or religious code, or just this is your ideology of your home, right? Like some homes don't study any religion, but they do have ideologies of
Morals.
and philosophies of how we're going to raise our children and what they should be and things of that nature. So that's why I don't ever shun anybody for not being a believer or anything of that nature. And I try, I think I've talked more about my faith, with you in this public forum and setting of this podcast than I really have with anybody actually in my program or the things that I do on a daily basis, even through social media, you
Because
know.
I don't think a lot of people live their faith out. Like, I don't know too many people who are actually every day taking time to read the word, to know what's moral or what's holy, what's God's purpose for our lives. And a lot of people don't know what God wants. A lot of people don't know God's will.
Yeah.
And that's
Or
that's what
we,
we're seeing play out. That's what we're seeing play out in culture, in society. And
scary, right? Like it's like, oh, okay, so now we have all these things that have come to the forefront, and like I said, you have these synonymous, very wealthy, very powerful black men per se. We're not even talking about the other side of the ledger, but there is definitely a de facto bias. There is definitely that is occurring. We see it. I think that black men are always in a public court of opinion are guilty before proven innocent, as opposed to being innocent until proven guilty. That's always kind of been a thing. I deal with it on a daily basis in a predominantly white led sport. Um, and it sucks because what I do personally, for some reason, always spills over into my professional, not based on me, but based on everybody else. So a lot of people will take what I'm doing, personally, and try to use it against me in my professional life. And the
we
two
have
are,
that black tax. We have that black tax.
well, I mean, and those are the things that I try to explain to very close people to me is that I've tried to learn how to be private with what is going on in my life. I'm going to let you see what I want you to see, but I also have to have a level of privacy that allows me to feel comfortable in private with the people that I care and love for. Um, and I think because of social media, I think we sometimes trick ourselves in thinking we know this person. And I think that's a big thing, right? Like, I don't know Sean Diddy Combs personally. Before all this, it's like, oh, he's just a party animal, loves music. Hopefully he didn't have any shady dealings with Pac or Biggie. These are all kind of hopes and prayers that these things that are coming out aren't necessarily true. But again, we don't know this person, but we also invoke this idealistic viewpoint of him. And I have a lot of friends who don't get starstruck. Like for me, there's very few people I will be starstruck to, just because they hold some sort of weight, probably in my early childhood development, from elementary to middle to high school, and even some college years with certain athletes. If I met Michael Jordan, probably speechless. If Kobe Bryant was still alive, probably speechless. I mean, but he had his own things too. I mean, that dude was in the playoffs and flying back to Colorado and hopping on a private jet to make his 7 o'clock game, you know, for an entire summer and winning, NBA finals and being the MVP while he was on trial for rape. So there's a lot of different things that, okay, are you going to decide, do I buy this CD because it's good music, or do I not buy it because it's good music, but this dude's a piece of shit, you know? So I think that's kind of where we're at right now with a lot
Right.
of people. With a lot of people,
Right.
like, I've been trying to follow, and I know this is a little off, but like I've been trying to follow this whole YSL thing, and it's like,
Yeah,
and I
it's so long.
oh, it's fucking terrible, but I've been using Twitter for it, right? And
Hmm.
it's like there's days where I feel like I have a grasp on what the fuck's going on with the evidence and the tampering and the line, just how they've gotten everybody to cooperate. And there's certain people that just took pleas. There's certain people that are still haven't been to the stands. It's like I'm confused on how even sometimes our judicial system works on all this, because if this was just a normal brother from, let's say, South Sac, that dude's probably already locked up.
Right.
One, he doesn't have the money for a defense attorney
But
or a
he's a
defense.
celebrity.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's like, okay, are the rules really different for these guys? You know, in 5 years' time, is Diddy going to be forgiven for what is all come out? And I'm not bashing him, you know, as a man. Like, he has to do whatever he has to do. He had at some point in his life, right, or when the end of his life, he will meet his maker and whoever that is in that capacity. Um,
Or he just dies and his legacy is terrible. You
it
know, if
could.
people don't believe in a God, I'm just saying, if people don't believe in a God, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I mean, and I hope that if he does say the things that he has said, right? Like, okay, so are you repenting for the things that you've done? And through that repentance, at least in his face, like the last interview, I think it came out like 2 weeks ago, he looks beat the fuck up. And I kind of know what that feels like. You know, he looks like he's had, you know, he's gone through 3 or 4 different divorces, basically, in which he has. He's lost money, homes raided, family, you know, interrogated, questioned, answered, dealing with social media aspects of things, dealing with the PR team, losing a lot of stakes in a lot of big business ventures that made him a shit ton of money. And to
I
not
think
have,
that honestly is what's hitting him the worst is losing all his money and his status of billionaire status and being this black excellent man. Him and women, I don't know. I would say that's questionable just based on how he's treated all the women in his life. So, yes, he probably is looking crazy right now because the money, you hit a man's pockets.
yeah, there's a lot of things that are scary because a lot of these people that have dealt with him are dead. You know,
Exactly. Like we
there's a lot.
could definitely touch on a lot of the rumors that are out here, but I don't know.
The biggest one for me, honestly, was the Bill Cosby stuff, right? Because that like tarnished my childhood. I mean, my house was very resemblant of the Huxtable household. You know, how we answered the phone, how we talked to our parents, how we greeted others, how we socially dealt with our friends, things of that nature. That was such an uplifting time, and showing others that, you know, black people can live just as prevalent and just as comfortable as white people in per se, right? And it gave hope to those that were of color, whether they're black, Hispanic, Asian, things like that. And I feel like these types of cultural phenomenons, like those shows, really gave inspiration to, you know, they also brought us HBCU, you know, notoriety. I attended an HBCU, and a lot of it was because I understood that we have our own colleges we can actually attend, you know, and these are very.
Representation. Yeah, they gave us something to look.
I know I can't get into Stanford, you know, because I just can't get into Stanford because usually it has to be on this higher tip. I felt like I'm a pretty smart dude, you know, but like if I can't get in for baseball reasons, then I can go to the HBCU that's just as significant and just holds as much weight within the black community, which I didn't really experience until like maybe junior, senior year of high school going into college, of understanding that there are very powerful, wealthy black people in America, and they have these different social status rings or groups or cliques that you can be a part of if you do the work, or if you know someone you can get into this type of, frat or club or whatever it may be.
That's
And
the real Black excellence right there. Not so much celebrities is what we're
yeah,
finding, but
and
what
I
you're talking about.
wholeheartedly agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I don't disagree with that statement at all. It's just hard because it does sell to the masses that may not have the same educational background or the same type of median income that you or I have come from, in that capacity. So again, when we're trying to uplift our communities and we're trying to uplift our people, and you have the people that are directly responsible for a lot of that, right? Like the consumption of what we're trying to do positively within the world are really bad people. It's like, fuck. Like, it sucks because now we're judged, and people don't understand this. As a Black man, I am judged off of my peers before somebody just judges who I am.
And I
So
think
there's
that's wrong. That is
there's
so
a lot
wrong.
of people of color in Sacramento, California, that don't bring me their children of color because they think I have some crazy ass, like, harebrained scheme to get rich. And it's not anywhere close to the truth, if that makes sense to you. And
Uh,
I deal with
well, a
that.
lot of people have a problem with seeing, people getting money, especially Black people. Like if you are well off and you're living upright and you're getting money, like that's almost like it's a, it's like a bad thing to some people. Like
It
you
is.
should almost be giving your resources out for free. Like I've
I,
in videography, I've noticed a lot of people want me to do things not at the industry rate. They want you to bring your prices down, and I don't know what that is. I don't really know why we do that to each other.
I think that a lot of it's the crabs in a barrel method, and the value of who we are. I mean, just look at certain things like there's
Or
stock when you say you have a degree, right? You and I can walk into a room together as friends and go have a meal together, and it'll be a crowded restaurant. And I know, and I don't really operate off of who's thinking it, but I know it's happening, right? I know that they are thinking something, or may have this stereotypical viewpoint of who you and I are. And I feel like we're always trying to buck that stereotype. And so when the stereotype that we're trying to buck is being bucked, but then they flip around and it's like, to take 5 steps forward and we got to take 15 back. Does that kind of sum it up, like, analogy wise? It's like, you completely fuck me, Diddy, on some of the things that I believed in you or utilized, or whether it's a quote, whether it's a video clip, and how passionate you are about business. And maybe I might not have those same business tactics, but like, what comes along with those business tactics are a telltale sign of that person's character. So all this shit for me all aligns and adds up, right? Like, when you take R. Kelly and then you say, and you look at their actual documentation of how bad he's been, it's like, fuck, I really don't want if I was to have another kid in this world, he's not ever listening to R. Kelly because of this, the person he is, not because of
Mhm.
the music he made. I just felt like we kind of got bamboozled with some of our idols and the people that we were supposed to be looking up to.
Well, okay, real quick. The reason I can listen to or I can't listen to R. Kelly is because the nature of his music was about little children, possibly. And I just can't listen
And
to
there's
it
those
the
little
same way.
innuendos that you didn't even know about, though. Like,
Huh?
here's the song. It's the innuendos of the songs, right? Like that
Yeah,
we.
like when you get into it.
So it's like, here's the best one. You want to know my favorite cleaning song of all time was, or
What?
just 12 play? That's what I used to clean my room to. Up until all this shit came out, I cleaned the house to. Like, 12 play was the shit. That's one of the greatest R&B albums ever,
I
right?
think R. Kelly's concert was the first concert I remember going to, put it like that.
Yeah. And so it's like, then you take one song off that album, just one. Seems Like You're Ready. And you're thinking that shit is
Oh, but yeah, think about it.
Like a 25-year-old something he met in the club, and it's like you're talking about a 14-year-old.
Right. Like it seems like you're ready. You might, you know what I mean? And so that's just kind of gross. So I can't do R. Kelly. Like
Really,
I'm fine with him being canceled.
about it though, because I could put the song on and we both can sing it verbatim. And so like I feel like we've been, like I said, bamboozled into, just his nickname, the Pied Piper. Okay, go look
Oh
that
my
shit.
Lord.
And these are things that were in ancient
Leading children and
Roman
yeah.
cultures that a lot of people don't know. And again, that's why I love history, because history does elude to us. I think, yes, we have fresh ideas as individuals. You and I could sit in a room for 2 hours and, whether we're inebriated on something or not, right? And come up with ideas for shows and different concepts and things like that. But we're always drawing from the past. That's why I get so frustrated with my players now is like, if you don't watch the sport, if you don't watch what you're actually doing, how are you going to know what to actually do? Not in just the present, but also understand what's going to happen in the future if you didn't understand the past. And so, like, knowing these guys' pasts, I feel very, like, kind of taken for a fool as a consumer, one. And then some of the ideologies of the music and how I've even treated women in my lifetime or others in my lifetime based on the consumption of listening to these gentlemen, do what they do. It makes you feel some type of way, at least for me. But that's
Yeah.
my morality. That's my
Yeah.
company.
Yeah, because like we were raised, you're supposed to be raised by your parents, but unfortunately, a lot of us are raised by our influences, our environment, and it's what's the word I'm looking for? Um, we're just raised by the wrong things.
Mhm. In some instances, I think
And well, real
you
quick,
and I can have a conversation, right, about this is also a telltale of what our upbringing was, is that we were taught to question and ask and seek wisdom and seek the reality or the truths of what we're doing. And even the new generation, I feel like they do a really good job of, if they're really about something, they really do go hard in the paint to get that shit out, right? Like, just how protests have evolved, how sit-ins have evolved, like boycotting things has evolved over the years. People, the whole GameStop thing, that always is funny to me. It's like GameStop's an obsolete ass thing, but the fucking stock, they keep trying to fuck with it, and then the general masses are like, "Nah, fuck you. We're gonna we're gonna fuck with it, and we're gonna get rich off of you being a dumbass." That kind of stuff. And it's like, I think we're smarter in today's world, but I also feel like we're also more gullible in today's society and world too, because of the 24-hour news cycle. What's your
yeah,
thought?
yeah. I mean, the news cycle, I don't know. It's okay. You're saying we're gullible? I'm trying to figure this out.
I feel
Um,
like as consumers, because that's how we're viewed, right? Like, I'm speaking if you and I were sitting at the head of a record company. And I know how those types of individuals think, because that's how they are taught to understand what is going to be consumed, right? Like,
how they market to us, right? Okay.
why back in the 90s A&R teams were so important, street teams were so important. you know I remember Taylor Made Music and their street teams, and how Dion Taylor and Joey and all these guys were going around everywhere to make sure their promotional mixtapes and things of that nature were put out. um but these highly influential people are doing all this stuff behind closed doors. It just makes you feel like, and you got to remember, there's a lot of people that strive to be Diddy, that strive to be R. Kelly, that strive to have these illustrious
And
life.
that's why it's hurtful though. That's why it's hurtful because I mean, we wanted mentors. I mean, I've always wanted a mentor, but whenever I seek anything outside of the Lord, it's like They will fail
They let
you.
you
Like
down.
people, man is gonna fail you every single time. And that's why a lot of the things you were saying, we can't cancel everyone. Like if because everyone is not perfect, even Christians, you know what I'm saying? Like people who are actually out here trying to live the lifestyle, be righteous, aren't perfect. And so now think of the people who aren't living the lifestyle. They're definitely not perfect by any means. So we can't cancel every single person. You know, that's all I'm trying to say.
Oh, I feel you. I just think like it's scary because like I mean, who is to make that determination that this individual is canceled, right?
Right. I
Like
saw
I think
somebody post that yesterday and I'm just like, what do you mean cancel? But then I looked at their profile and it's a younger person. Like these younger people are raised off of social media culture, I guess you would say. And so canceling somebody, what is it? What you just you're not gonna support them? Or there's actually people out here. Like what's the extent of canceling somebody? You know, like you're just not gonna like their pictures.
well, what you're seeing with Diddy, what you saw with Bill Cosby was kind of one of the first ones, in my opinion, in Black culture being canceled just by his own people and by others, right?
But
Like,
you can't, but see that I've always had a hard time with this cancel culture thing because they're not canceled. I mean, maybe to the social media world, but in their real life world, they still have hundreds and thousands, maybe millions of people who love them and who are blindly going to love them regardless because of the idolatry factor. So
well,
it's like, it's just like a social media culture that doesn't really hold any weight in the real world. And the thing is, a lot of people are looking at this social media as the real world. So what'd you say?
social media shit is these people's real lives and their real worlds.
And
Like,
it's messing us up. It's messing us
it,
up.
I go back to the days, like, you remember that movie Total Recall,
Hmm.
Arnold?
Hmm.
It's
Good
like
movie.
a great movie because that shit is right now. We're living that shit. Max
Mhm.
Headroom. These types of ideas that formulated through virtual reality, like putting yourself in an alternate state. The Sims was a great idea, right? Because it gave you, and it depends on how you were playing it. Like my dad used to make me play it to manage money.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
He was like, you need to learn how to manage money. So here's $100, go start the game.
That's
And
dope that your dad, yeah.
but he would be right there. I mean, we'd be on the lap, the big fucking Macintosh or the big fucking IBM computer typing away and, clicking and trying to, go to work, go home, make sure when the week came, I got to pay rent. It was teaching certain things,
It was a
certain
tool. It wasn't your real life, which a lot of
exactly.
people
But
think this stuff is real life.
a lot of people blend those two. A lot of people
Yeah.
fucking skew those lines. They blur those lines extremely in today's world, for
Like
sure.
we've been groomed, like where we are right now with how we view everything in life, we've kind of been groomed into this weird ass social media culture, if you think about it.
But I think it's been a plan to do that because the big shit, if you're not up on the way you are, right? I gave you those props last week. I'll give them to you so the whole audience knows again. Like you yourself have helped me stay on top of topics I can't find or that aren't just being out there. So like there's things that you post and I'm like, cool, like, all right, if Stacey's posting this must hit home somewhere for her. Okay. And we align in a lot of different ways as we've come to find out over the last three
Yeah.
plus months, right? And so those things matter to me too. So you being that person that is researching and developing to curate, whether it's a podcast or just who you are as a Christian, right? As a person, like those things become very relevant, right? And very prevalent in our lives. And I just feel like we were kind of taken for fools with some of these dudes, and we've allowed these dudes like Russell and like Puffy and like Bill for 30, 40, 50 years. They've been highly influential people that are fucking shitty people.
But yeah, but it's the whole premise of the entertainment industry. And that's
Mhm.
what we have to realize. Like, even though it's inspiring, but these people are, it's entertainment. And I remember my mom, she used to hate when rap started coming out. She didn't like me getting into all the rap music stuff. And I'm like,
Oh,
Mom,
you,
it's just
you,
entertainment.
you sneak The Simpsons and In Living Color. My parents weren't having that shit, you
Yeah.
know.
Well,
Up
that
and
stuff was cool, but just not the rap videos. My mom was really not into rap.
well,
Like I
because
didn't get into
I
rap until
understand,
later.
like, not even really knowing your mom, just the misogyny part of hip hop will
She still hates it to this day.
women of faith. I'm not going to just say culture, right? I'm not going to say, race or culture. Just women of faith, hip hop will fuck you up. Like and I understand where she's coming from because my mom, both my moms and my dad and my grandmother, they freaking loathe it. And there's still
Yeah.
stuff to this day. Like my dad doesn't really listen to hip hop. Like there are a few songs, like they're more of the Will Smith, like, yeah, we'll get
They're
jiggy
like,
with it.
oh, that's fine. Yeah. Or if it has a good beat, and then but when they start listening to the words, they're like, oh.
Yeah. So like those are things that we all, I think you and I both understand too. And I felt like there's times where I guess I'm biased and I'll go out, I'm not going to go out on a limb. I'm just going to let everybody know, like, I'm very biased about our era and where we grew up and how we grew up, because I feel like we are the hybrids of all of this. Uh,
Mhm.
we had old fashioned morals, old fashioned goals mixed in with very new age technology. We've evolved with every single technological advancement in the last 40 years. We've been a
Even
part of
new age
that.
ideals as well.
Yeah. So like we've lived through Oregon Trail to now, Apple VR. Um, and I don't even think my kid could have handled some of those types of nuances or changes and things of that nature. The kids that I coach right now from a 14 and under perspective, eighth grade and down, um, have no idea how to actually check out a library book or go into the index cards and alphabetically find what you're looking for, or even understand how to space out a paragraph on a fucking piece of paper because their handwriting is so bad because they don't do penmanship in school anymore. So like
Mhm.
all of these things that deteriorate over the years, or they try to make obsolete over that. Like I still write pen to pad. I've told you that in a lot of notebooks. Like I'm still pen to pad,
Me too.
transferred over to digital. Like I write every single day. I will never not write every single day because it was always a part of our fabric of who we were. Um, it's just really hard because it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow, I think, for all of us, like from our generation of seeing these guys that we definitely have a lot of memories made to, or who we were striving to be. I loved fashion. And so my love for fashion has been since I was like 8 or 9 years old, with my mother being in the fashion industry. And it got to a point where it's like, do I just want to do fashion or do I want to do baseball? Right. When I got out of high school, and as my early 20s, I'm working at Gap, I'm learning the industry, I'm learning all these things, how to do it, how to set up a storefront, how to do a mannequin, how to place marketing, and and have these things fly off the shelves. I mean, I remember obviously denim jackets were a big thing, 98 to about 2001. Like I remember being at, assistant manager in Arden Fair's Gap, like pushing the shit out of it, like layering people up, right? And
Mhm.
it's because of what we were seeing on MTV, what we saw on BET. And these guys were the forefront of those dudes that were wearing it and doing it. And it's like, fuck, man, like you guys don't realize like how much influence you have. And it's like, if I could ever sit down with any one of them, it's like, what the fuck was your problem? Is what I would ask. I mean, like that would be my first interview question stage. Like, what were you thinking? Like, and I know because I'm not going to judge you. I just
They,
would like to
yeah,
know,
I
what
don't
was
think
your
they were thinking.
fuck? No, they're not.
They're
Because
just having fun. They're just living the life. Because when you're in that lifestyle, like when I lived in LA for 7 years, and had no clue what was going on in the outside world. Like LA life is really party life. Like Hollywood, all that, it's fun. It's nonstop fun. But if you aren't grounded in anything, you're gonna have a hard time making good decisions. And think about Puffy and all those guys. They lived this life for decades.
Mhm.
They've lived this life for decades, and it's just they've had all the best things with all the access and money in the world. They're not going to make good decisions. Like especially if they're not grounded.
we're seeing that, right? Like that's there for sure.
Like my biggest thing in life is decision making. Like wherever you are today is from a decision you made yesterday. And unfortunately, a lot of people are making poor choices because we just don't, I mean, I can't speak for myself, but like a lot of people just don't try to improve or try to be better or try to see how their actions may affect somebody else. And they're just living in the moment. Like there's good things about that, but you also need to like use some kind of critical thinking of where you are and how what you're going to do may have an effect on you, your family, and just your career, like everything. But
Mhm.
people aren't thinking like that.
So what do you think is going to happen with these guys? Let's just take the top three, right? Let's
They
go.
crashing out. They're all crashing out. And some of the rumors that are coming out, I just really pray that they are not true because it's going to hurt a lot of people since we are in an idolatry type environment. I just really hope these rumors aren't going to be true, but I do remember like growing up, I really enjoyed mob movies. And I think a lot of people do like mob movies like The Godfather and
Goodfellas.
Scarface, you know what I mean? But a lot of those guys that were powerful and on top, they all came crashing down and they only had a couple paths: prison, death, a life of paranoia, or substance abuse and just crashed out. So that fast life, there's no good ending to the fast life.
I got a
Like,
song to use.
oh, okay. All right. Good. I can't wait to hear.
Yeah. I well, we'll do the when you finish production and the editing. But yeah, I think that we see it constantly. We see it with
Yeah.
some
Because
brought up earlier, but like you see it, like you see this guy um kind of crash and burn, and then he's been resurrected about three different times in the last 5 6 years, right, since his epic meltdown here in SAC. But then you realize, okay, he's having these epic meltdowns because he's paranoia of who he was married to and that whole conglomerate and all that shit that's now coming out.
wait, who are you talking about? Sorry.
Kim,
Who?
the Kardashian empire.
Oh, Kardashian.
That's some
Yeah.
fun. That's some shit I've already predicted, though.
Yeah. I mean, like spiritually, God only gives us so much grace. And like if you don't repent and you don't change your ways, like
He'll find a
huh?
he'll find a way to fucking knock you on your ass.
Yeah, like no matter what faith you believe in, there's always this karmic principles and universal law and you sow and reap. Like it's going to happen. Like your downfall is imminent because I mean spiritually it says we're supposed to stay on a path that's straight and narrow. Because there's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of ways you can go. And every direction that's not on this straight and narrow boring path, it's going to end in ruin if you're not supposed to do that.
But who was the biggest one for you? Who was the biggest shock and disappointment for you? Will be my last question to you.
um, for right now, what we're going through, let's see this Diddy one is hitting me really hard. Diddy's hitting me really hard because I've always admired, like going from music to a mogul. Like that's really my path in life that I've wanted to go down in one way or the other. But I've also had a taste of that life and I've seen others go through it. And I don't know if that's necessarily for me at this point, but just because it is very toxic and corrupt,
Mhm.
like everybody that's in the entertainment industry either is on top and then falls and then you never hear from again, or even on the indie level there's a lot of people who go and that are super super talented but never get on because it's just too much stuff that's not related to music that happens that crushes your
As far as
spirit.
I'm glad you said that on the indie tip. You know, two artists, or three, I should say, that really still to this day frustrate me that aren't who they should have been. One is Little Brother,
Um,
Lupe Fiasco,
mm,
Chance the Rapper.
mhm. But
But I,
they're all spiritual
but I could even
dudes.
throw in Mos Def and Talib Kweli, right?
Yeah,
And certain guys, I feel like Talib, Mos Def, The Roots, they've common, they're where they should be in praise of generalities. I think Kanye helped all of them with those types of things, you know, putting them on. You know, the Roots have been in our living rooms for the last, what, 7 years with Jimmy Fallon. So like there's an appreciation there from the masses that they do deserve. But those are groups or just individuals in hip hop that I've always felt like never got their flowers for who they were and what they brought. And there's so many more. Obviously, I'm missing a boat, but these are my favorites, right? These are
yeah,
my
yeah,
favorites. It's sad because you know Drake got a lot of his style from Little Brother. You know, they were collaborative early on and probably taught him a lot. And you know, he ran with that. Fontaine was Drake before you know Drake was Drake. You
yeah.
know,
But
and
certain people have that tenacity where they could fight through all the stuff that has nothing to do with
like you said,
creativity.
there's a lot of people that become industry plants. You know, that's like the biggest thing in that battle. Kendrick called Drake out on that the entire time. You know, and I think Cat Williams, and I'll allude to this again, is I think Cat Williams's interview in the first month of the year really solidified what we're seeing right now. And
The
I
year of
believe
exposure.
I just believe he was telling the truth. I think that was his reality, his truth, and he was not afraid to say it because you
And
got to.
everybody has this story. Like if you get into it, a lot of people that have been in the industry have a story about sexual harassment, how somebody, cheated them, how somebody betrayed them. Like it's just a part of the industry. And if you're not made for that, you're gonna step out.
Let me
You're
not
not.
fake the funk on that and make sure everybody understands. It's in every single fucking industry in the world. It doesn't matter if it's sports, hip hop, culture, fashion, anything. It's a part of it, and it's sad because it's like I see it all the time. The political part, just in baseball. I mean, we can do a whole episode on it if you'd like at some point, but
Sure.
you know, because it's hard. It's really, really hard. Like I said, it's hard to gain trust from people just in your own community, let alone outside of your community, let alone if, let's say, you get national notoriety for what you are actually doing. Then the skeletons are sought out. And people seek out and seek to destroy what is positive and what is good in the world. And then based on, is this person actually living what he's saying? Which a lot of times we find out not to be the case or true.
Yeah.
Um, and it's
That's
not
why,
saying
real quick, that's why I mentioned the black tax. Like black men, you guys have to really watch what you do. Like you really have to think about what you're doing. Otherwise, they're gonna find stuff.
my two sons. What have I always preached to them? You have 2.5 strikes in this game, bro. 2.5. Like everybody gets three, but you start off with two to two
You
and a
might
half.
get one.
Oh, you already have two on you. You know, in baseball, you get three, right? You get strike one, you get strike two, you strike three, you're out. Some of us are born or, you know, in these types of environments where you have two already, you know, based on where you grew up, what's your median household income, what's your education system like. There's a lot of different nuances to those strikes. It's not just being a criminal, it's not just being a bad person. You have these strikes just because of the skin tone or the way you talk or the way you present yourself. Are you short? Are you fat? Are you tall? Are you skinny? Do you look like a hooper? Do you look like a football player? You know how many times I get that shit from people? Oh, you look like you coach football. It's like, what the fuck does that fucking mean? What does that
Right,
mean? Like just
right.
because I'm
Well,
5'8",
our world is stereotypical.
or dude, I know, but that's the things that suck. And then when you have these people that are one percenters that have defied all of these kind of de facto stereotypical behaviors of others, and they've defied it and made millions and even billions in these cases like Russ and Diddy and these guys. It's like, okay, at what point is there a morality clause, right? Like, do we actually have one, or do we just, is it the wild wild west? Do we just let them be? Like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't
It's the
believe in
Wild Wild West.
yeah, it is. It's always been that. So I just think, like, because we have so much information at our fingertips nowadays than what we did have before, that we were fed lies in school. We weren't taught certain things that we should have been taught. Like, I was very lucky to take at least 5 to 6, if I'm not mistaken, African American cultural studies courses in secondary education to learn
Mhm.
about Black Wall Street in actual class. I learned that in 2001 about
Wow.
this Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and understanding that we weren't these people that were just shackled and sharecroppers and cotton pickers and bootleggers and a lot of negativity that goes along with being an entrepreneur or quote unquote a hustler. you know um, Not everybody that is rich is peddling drugs. I went talked about it last week, on that show Snowfall, where he was like yelling at the DEA agent, like, motherfucker, I don't have a plane license. I don't have a passport. Like, how the fuck am I bringing this shit in from Medellin, Colombia? Like, this is all you guys. And so I just feel like there's a game that's being played, but only the elites can win.
Yeah. And they win for a long time. But as we're seeing, it eventually comes down. And I don't think it's the Illuminati or anything like that. I mean, it might be, he might have, you know, well, his downfall was Cassie.
But
But he could have kept that off the records because she tried to get him to pay her beforehand, and he was like, "Nah, I'm not paying you." And she called his bluff and put it out there, you know.
okay,
So I mean, everybody. Oh no, the leads can win, but they come down to. But if you're not an elite, you're gonna be judged differently. You're going to be judged differently, and you're going to actually be judged by the actual justice system and based on your resources if you have a great attorney or whatever. But
exactly.
like a lot of it, and even like the justice system, it's really about what you can prove and what you can't prove. And if you have a smart attorney that can help you do that, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're right or
Well,
if you
isn't
did it or didn't do it, it's what you can prove.
right? You have to seek wise counsel, Stace, and I'm very blessed, like you are too. You have me, and we have Charles in common, and we have wise counsel, and you have your parents, which is great. Like, the fact that you do spend a lot of time with your elders in your life, I think that those are really important gifts, and we can't ever downplay those gifts. I don't need a bunch of celebrity friends to make me feel better, about myself or who I am. And I actually had this conversation on the golf course on Sunday. It's like, I've been blessed in baseball to have a lot of really famous fucking friends, famous people that I have in my contact sheet that I could text and call and FaceTime and talk shit. Or when we see each other, it's love, it's all these things. But like, I've never been the person to ask them for a fucking thing. I'm not picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, Gary Matthew, hey, Cece, I need something." No, I've never done that. Like, because how we met was very genuine. I think that
Mhm.
that's also a big thing with who your company you're keeping and things like that. And a lot of these people deal with things that are outside our jurisdiction that we've never experienced. There's a lot of people that make it that end up having to deal with the leeches and to deal with the people that are on the come up. And there's a lot of exploitation that happens in a lot of industries, especially the hip hop industry or the music industry or the fashion industry or the sports world. And
Uh,
it's come up ever, right? Like, if I can extort this guy, how many guys have been extorted over the years from their contracts, from their agencies, all these different factors that just really, and
yeah,
pardon me, I mean, fuck you up, can really
yeah.
mess or
It's
who.
levels. It's
Yeah,
definitely levels to it. And just think what they have to deal with on their level when we're experiencing the same things in our, I guess, what do you call it? Commoner life. Not, I won't say not successful, but not a celebrity. And just because we're resourceful and we have something to give and that we do give so freely, people are doing the same type of things. I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully you haven't experienced that, but
In a lot of
I
ways,
have.
in a lot of ways, but I appreciate you wanting to tackle this topic. So I, very,
And to be
again,
continued.
yeah, for sure, because we still got to figure out what the hell's going on, and then once the truth comes out, and whatever's happening, we just got to make sure that we err on the side of caution, and some of the things that were said or not said, or more information might come out. It's a sad time for me as a hip hop fan, an extreme hip hop fan, to see this downfall of people that are trusted in the industry, and who made the industry what it was and what it is today. So a lot of people that are in this shit are in it because of these dudes.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody needs to get it together real quick so that they don't crash out like Diddy.
Get to that shit. But I appreciate
Repent, repent.
Yes. And
Which
pray.
just means change behavior. That's what repentance is.
Don't like to change shit. They don't like change in general. The word change scares the shit out of everybody. Trust
Yeah,
me.
right.
I mean, there's
Oh,
there's a quote I want to give. Go ahead. I'll let you go first.
I was just gonna say, yeah, because if Diddy's gone, because and for me, Drake, he was at the top of the top, and he's kind of having his little downfall moment. So yeah.
I think that that's just more in a public space of opinion on social media, in the blogs and things like that. That motherfucker's still on top of it. He's still posting shit like nothing ever happened. Just even
Yeah.
yesterday.
I mean, he's a global icon. Like, just what I'm saying, like, people aren't going to stop liking Drake. Like, if we didn't have Drake for the last decade, our summers would have been hella boring. I love Drake. I won't say I love Drake because I don't know him personally, but I love his music.
Yeah.
And I
And
relate to a lot of the stuff that he goes through in his music.
if you want to use this quote for the rest of your life, um, it was given to me by one of my ex coaches, and I wish things would have been different between us, and unfortunately they weren't. And he actually fell into the quote. And a lot of times, what I've seen is the overzealous parent that didn't have a real handle on the reality of their child, right? Like that's what I deal with every day, is making sure to steer a family in the right direction based on what their son's actual capabilities are, without trying to overshoot, who they really are, because they're going to be told in another room or another entity of who they really are. So we try to tell them the truth now, right? But here's the quote. People are going to always be inconsistently inconsistent. So just remember that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I said it. Oh, wow. Because
Huh?
then I said that left side of your brain was like, damn, that's because when you really break that shit down, that shit's deep.
Yeah. And it's kind of like the only constant is change. You know what I'm
Period.
saying?
Period. Thank my therapist for that one. So I love you.
I love you
Thank
too. Peace.